Hello, this is part two of Madison's story, and it's too nice to not be outside filming this for you. So, part two of Madison's story, a week after she was released from the hospital, we went to the hospital, and I was planning on it just being Maddie and I, and my mom was demanding to go. Motherly instinct. And so my mom ended up taking us, and I will never forget when Dr. Hugie came in to the room and started taking an ink pen and drawing stuff on a bed sheet that was in the hospital. So that's kind of when everything turned. We knew then that it was not a virus that caused her immune system to shut down. It was actually a monosomy 7, and that's when her bone marrow stopped, deleted the 7th chromosome, and if not treated with a bone marrow transplant, would result in an aggressive form of AML. So, through all of that information that Dr. Hugie was throwing my direction, things that came up that were scary for me were the fact that usually it's familial, meaning that Harrison and Mabry could have it or could develop it down the road, and that they needed as well to be tested. So not knowing that one child was heading towards bone marrow transplant, but the possibility of all three of your kids going through just, I'm not going to lie, scared me greatly. So we got back, and then obviously, informing family of everything that was going on. Then Thursday, we walked into the Costas Center with our 3 kids and my parents, and that was one of the most life-changing days that we had. We met Katie and Fallon, and Grandma Flossie was there that day as well. And that's when our lifelong friendship with the Schlotman family began. From that day on, I think Maddie took on the role of protecting Fallon, and I took on the role of just walking hand in hand with Kate. So such a great friendship started that day. Thursday of that week, they did all the blood work and found that Harrison and Mabry did have bone marrow suppression as well. So they took them in directly to a bone marrow biopsy, where they found that they sent the genetic testing off that came back that they did not have monosomy 7 at that time. So then Harrison was a perfect match for Maddie. However, because he had bone marrow suppression, we felt, the doctors actually felt that it was not a good match for Maddie, because he could develop monosomy 7, or his bone marrow would not have been strong enough to fight the disease. So we then went on a hunt for a donor, and we found one that was 9 out of 10, but they didn't pass the second round of stuff, meaning like they more than likely had an STD or some other things going on. So then we went to the umbilical cord, and we could not find a perfect match through that. So we knew going into transplant with a 4 out of 6 match that she would more than likely have graft versus host disease. But still, we felt it needed to be, transplant was necessary for Madison. So the months of May and June were fast. I feel like it was just like a whirlwind. We celebrated Maddie's first birthday on June 14th, and then we went into the transplant unit on July 5th, and then she had her new bone marrow transplant on July 16th. So this July will be 5 years in remission for Madison. So it was fast. I always like to hit the pause button, like her story. Things were happening before she was ever even diagnosed. Our farm the previous fall was busy. I had just had Maddie in June. We did not put plastic down, and I was out picking weeds on my hands and knees weeks after having a baby. And I will never forget Debbie Hall, a good friend of mine, and her calmness. She was on her hands and knees with me picking weeds that summer, and I shared with her right before Maddie got diagnosed. We went for a walk, and I said, I don't know how I can redo last fall. And, you know, I left teaching to stay at home to raise our kids. Do not regret that at all. I highly recommend that. If you have the opportunity to stay home with your kids when they're little, do it. You won't regret it. And I found that then I was called into ministry and did part-time ministry, and there was just so many things, like so much noise going on right before Maddie was diagnosed. So December and January and February, and just a lot of praying, like, God, like, what am I doing? Like, is this what you want me to be doing? Where am I supposed to be? And, you know, I call it divine intervention when God just kind of hits the pause button on everything and literally picks you up from where you are and places you somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened 5 years ago. And I feel like in a lot of ways, that's what happened to us on March 16th when we went to stay at home and school stopped, and God just kind of stopped everything, moved us from our normal comfort zone of busy, and boom, moved us into stillness and quiet. And that's a divine intervention, my friends. Like, that's how it works. You know, like, how often do we think, you know, I have a lot of friends whose kids, you know, are all in sports and they're older and busy and doing all different things. And they say, you know, we have to do this. We have the game here. We have this, and this, and this. And they feel obligated to do all those things, and they can't say no for whatever reason. And then God steps in. Divine intervention. All of a sudden, no more sports. You know, he hit the pause button. And it's like, I know that it's uncomfortable, but you know what? I could kind of get used to this every 5 years, right? Like 5 years ago it happened, and now it's happening again, where God's like, okay, Lindsay, I told you I did not want you going 120 miles per hour. 5 years later, you are going 120 miles per hour. So I'm going to hit the pause button. I'm going to take you out of your comfort, and I'm going to move you to where I need you. And, you know, I hope that you guys are all trying to embrace the stillness, because there's a lot to be learned during this quiet time. Often, I wish I could be back into that transplant unit, which is crazy. We were there for over 80 days, but it was still, and I had one goal every day: to love Madison, to love her through that season. That was my one job. And I was able to do that, and I was able to put all of it in, you know, my whole self into that. And so my prayer is for you that you're able to figure out what your one focus is during this time and be successful at it. So that's kind of, you know, we were in the hospital. We had all of that going on. We did not get out until end of September, and we went to the Ronald McDonald Apartments, where we stayed there. The kids joined us, joined Maddie and I at the end of September, and Ryan. That was the first time our whole family was separated from July to September, and it was awful, and humbling. My husband, you know, Ryan, those of you that know him, he's part ninja, I think. He was home we had to make some renovations and stuff to our house to make them safer for Madison. So he was home doing that. My parents were helping with Harrison and Mabry. And, you know, I joke, that's why, hi, Mom, glad you had me at 16 and Dad was 18. And now here's my kids because we need you. So they had the kids, and it was hard. It was hard on all of us to be separated, and we made it. we made it through that season. And then we had the kids at the Ronald McDonald Apartments. I was trying to handle all of that. It was hard. Oh my goodness, it was hard. And I blogged all of that, so you're more than welcome to go back and read those and watch the video post of, those milestones that we had on that journey. And then we came home in January. So Maddie and I were away from home from July to January. And then the healing started, the healing process for Madison, with therapies and all that fun stuff. And so that took us into 2016 is when we came home in January. And then she was recovering all the way up until, 2017. And the summer of 2017, right before that was spring, when we were in the transplant unit, God was calling me to go back to school and get my master's degree in counseling. And I still love the classroom. I love school. And I was like, why am I going back to school for counseling? I love the classroom. And, it's because God had a plan. And so when Maddie got better, I applied for the program that spring in 2017, and then was in graduate school and graduated last May in 2019. So that is part 2 of Maddie's story of the diagnosis, and there's so much more that had gone on during those hours and days and weeks and months. So what I'm leaving with you today, and I'm going to come back and do a part 3, and I'm sure my brother's like, oh, Linz, what else do you have to say for part 3? I don't know. I always got stuff to say, right? So I'm going to come back and do a part 3. But what I want you to do for me is think about what you've been able to do or not do during this stay-at-home order. I know we all have these huge plans for March and April and birthday parties and sports season starting and practices and all this stuff, and you didn't do any of that. So what have you been doing? What have you been able to do that you would not have been doing? And that's where the power comes in, is I think oftentimes we think about everything that we can't do, and we forget to focus on what it is that we can do, And so that's the challenge. And please share your comments below on what you've been able to do during this stay-at-home order. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. It's supposed to rain the rest of the week, so get outside, enjoy this beautiful, beautiful day. Sending many blessings your way.